Lithuania. Listen, Lithuanian, Lietuva, LJTV, officially the Republic of Lithuania. Lithuanian, Lietuvos Respublika, is a country in the Baltic region of Europe. It is one of 3 Baltic states and lies on the eastern shore of the Baltic Sea. Lithuania shares land borders with Latvia to the north, Belarus to the east and south, Poland to the south, and Kaliningrad Oblast of Russia to the southwest. Lithuania covers an area of 65,300 square kilometers, 25,200 square miles, with a population of 2.8 million. Its capital and largest city is Vilnius. Other major cities are Kaunas and Klaipėda. Lithuanians belong to the ethno-linguistic group of the Balts and speak Lithuanian, one of only a few living Baltic languages. For millennia the southeastern shores of the Baltic Sea were inhabited by various Baltic tribes. In the 1230s, Lithuanian lands were united by Mindaugas, founding the Kingdom of Lithuania on the 6th of July 1253. In the 14th century, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania was the largest country in Europe. Present-day Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, and parts of Poland and Russia were all lands of the Grand Duchy. The Crown of the Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania were in a de facto personal union from 1386 with the marriage of the Polish Queen Hedwig and Lithuania's Grand Duke Jogaila, who was crowned king during Uxaryslady's Law to Jagiello of Poland. The Commonwealth of Poland and Lithuania was established by the Union of Lublin in July 1569. The Commonwealth lasted more than 2 centuries, until neighboring countries dismantled it in 1772 to 1795, with the Russian Empire annexing most of Lithuania's territory. As World War I ended, Lithuania's Act of Independence was signed on the 16th of February 1918, founding the modern Republic of Lithuania. In World War II, Lithuania was occupied first by the Soviet Union and then by Nazi Germany. Towards the end of the war in 1944, when the Germans were retreating, the Soviet Union reoccupied Lithuania. Lithuanian armed resistance to the Soviet occupation lasted until the early 1950s. On the 11th of March 1990, a year before the formal dissolution of the Soviet Union, Lithuania passed the Act of the Re-establishment of the State of Lithuania, becoming the first Soviet republic to proclaim its independence. Lithuania is a developed country, with a high-income advanced economy, ranking very high in the Human Development Index. It ranks favorably in terms of civil liberties, press freedom, internet freedom, democratic governance, and peacefulness. Lithuania is a member of the European Union, the Council of Europe, Eurozone, the Nordic Investment Bank, Schengen Agreement, NATO and OECD. It participates in the Nordic-Baltic 8, NB8, regional cooperation format and is a permanent observer of Nordic Council. Etymology – The first known record of the name of Lithuania, Lithuanian, Lietuva, is in a 9th of March 1009 story of Saint Bruno in the Quedlinburg Chronicle. The chronicle recorded a Latinized form of the name Lietuva, Litua, pronounced Litua. Due to the lack of reliable evidence, the true meaning of the name is unknown. Nowadays, scholars still debate the meaning of the word and there are a few plausible versions. Since Lietuva has a suffix, uva, the original word should have no suffix. A likely candidate is Lieta. Because many Baltic ethnonyms originated from hydronyms, linguists have searched for its origin among local hydronyms. Usually, such names evolved through the following process: hydronym, toponym, ethnonym. Lietuva, a small river not far from Kanav, the core area of the early Lithuanian state and a possible first capital of the eventual Grand Duchy of Lithuania, is usually credited as the source of the name. However, the river is very small and some find it improbable that such a small and local object could have lent its name to an entire nation. On the other hand, such naming is not unprecedented in world history. Archerus Dubonis proposed another hypothesis, that Lietuva relates to the word Lcii, plural of Litus. From the middle of the 13th century, Baltii were a distinct warrior social group of the Lithuanian society subordinate to the Lithuanian ruler or the state itself. The word Baltii is used in the 14th-16th century historical sources as an ethnonym for Lithuanians, but not Samogitians, and is still used, usually poetically or in historical contexts, in the Latvian language, which is closely related to Lithuanian. History The first people settled in the territory of Lithuania after the last glacial period in the 10th millennium BC, Kunda, Neman and Narva cultures. They were traveling hunters and did not form stable settlements. In the 8th millennium BC, the climate became much warmer, and forests developed. The inhabitants of what is now Lithuania then traveled less and engaged in local hunting, gathering and freshwater fishing. Agriculture did not emerge until the 3rd millennium BC due to a harsh climate and terrain and a lack of suitable tools to cultivate the land. Crafts and trade also started to form at this time. Over a millennium, the Indo-Europeans, who arrived in the 3rd, 2nd millennium BC, mixed with the local population and formed various Baltic tribes. The Baltic tribes did not maintain close cultural or political contacts with the Roman Empire, but they did maintain trade contacts. See Amber Road. Tacitus, in his study Germania, described the Isti people, inhabitants of the southeastern Baltic Sea shores who were probably Balts, around the year 97 AD. The Western Balts differentiated and became known to outside chroniclers first. Ptolemy in the 2nd century had knew of the Galindians and Yotvingians, and early medieval chroniclers mentioned Old Prussians, Curonians, and Semi-Gallians. The Lithuanian language is considered to be very conservative for its close connection to Indo-European roots. It is believed to have differentiated from the Latvian language, the most closely related existing language, around the 7th century. Traditional Lithuanian pagan customs and mythology, with many archaic elements, were long preserved. Rulers' bodies were cremated up until the conversion to Christianity. The descriptions of the cremation ceremonies of the Grand Dukes Algirdas and Kęstutis have survived. Grand Duchy of Lithuania From the 9th to the 11th centuries, coastal Balts were subjected to raids by the Vikings, and the kings of Denmark collected tribute at times. During the 10-11th centuries, Lithuanian territories were among the lands paying tribute to Kievan Rus, and Yaroslav the Wise was among the Ruthenian rulers who invaded Lithuania, from 1040. From the mid-12th century, it was the Lithuanians who were invading Ruthenian territories. In 1183, Polotsk and Pskov were ravaged, and even the distant and powerful Novgorod Republic was repeatedly threatened by the excursions from the emerging Lithuanian war machine toward the end of the 12th century. From the late 12th century, an organized Lithuanian military force existed. It was used for external raids, plundering and the gathering of slaves. Such military and pecuniary activities fostered social differentiation and triggered a struggle for power in Lithuania. This initiated the formation of early statehood, from which the Grand Duchy of Lithuania developed. The disparate Lithuanian tribes along the Nemunas were united into the Lithuanian state by 1219. At the latest, the only Lithuanian Roman Catholic king, Mindaugas, was baptized as a Roman Catholic in 1251 and crowned as King of Lithuania on the 6th of July 1253. After his assassination in 1263, pagan Lithuania was a target of the Christian crusades of the Teutonic Knights and the Livonian Order. Siege of Pylena is noted for the Lithuanians' defense against the intruders. Despite the devastating century-long struggle with the orders, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania expanded rapidly, overtaking former Ruthenian principalities of Kievan Rus. On the 22nd of September 1236, the Battle of Saul between Samogitians and the Livonian Brothers of the Sword took place close to Sauli. The Livonian brothers were defeated during it and their further conquest of the Balts lands were stopped. The battle inspired rebellions among the Curonians, Semi-Gallians, Silonians, Assylians, tribes previously conquered by the Sword Brothers. Some 30 years' worth of conquests on the left bank of Daugava were lost. In 2000, the Lithuanian and Latvian parliaments declared the 22nd of September to be the Day of Baltic Unity. According to the legend, Grand Duke Gediminas was once hunting near the Vilnia River. Tired after the successful hunt, he settled in for the night and dreamed of a huge iron wolf standing on top a hill and howling as strong and loud as 100 wolves. Krivis, pagan priest, Lizdiku interpreted the dream that the iron wolf represents Vilnius castles. Gediminas, obeying the will of gods, built the city and gave it the name Vilnius, from the stream of the Vilnia River. In 1362 or 1363, Grand Duke Algirdas achieved a decisive victory in the Battle of Blue Waters against Golden Horde and stopped its further expansion in the present-day Ukraine. The victory brought the city of Kyiv and a large part of present-day Ukraine, including sparsely populated Podolia and Dykra, under the control of the expanding Grand Duchy of Lithuania. After taking Kyiv, Lithuania became a direct neighbor and rival of the Grand Duchy of Moscow. By the end of the 14th century, Lithuania was one of the largest countries in Europe and included present-day Belarus, Ukraine, and parts of Poland and Russia. The geopolitical situation between the West and the East determined the multicultural and multi-confessional character of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. The ruling elite practiced religious tolerance and Chancery Slavonic language was used as an auxiliary language to the Latin for official documents. In 1385, the Grand Duke Jogaila accepted Poland's offer to become its king. Jogaila embarked on gradual Christianization of Lithuania and established a personal union between Poland and Lithuania. Lithuania was one of the last pagan areas of Europe to adopt Christianity, while territories to the north had been Christianized in 1186 by Western merchants and missionaries who formed the Order of the Brothers and the Sword to spread Christianity through military organization. The Lithuanians had defeated the Order's militant efforts in 1236. After two civil wars, Vytautas the Great became the Grand Duke of Lithuania in 1392. During his reign, Lithuania reached the peak of its territorial expansion, centralization of the state began, and the Lithuanian nobility became increasingly prominent in state politics. In the Great Battle of the Vorskla River in 1399, the combined forces of Tokhtamish and Vytautas were defeated by the Mongols. Thanks to close cooperation, the armies of Lithuania and Poland achieved a victory over the Teutonic Knights in 1410 at the Battle of Grunwald, one of the largest battles of medieval Europe. In January 1429, at the Congress of Lutsk, Vytautas received the title of King of Lithuania with the backing of Sigismund, Holy Roman Emperor, but the envoys who were transporting the crown were stopped by Polish magnates in autumn of 1430. Another crown was sent, but Vytautas died in the Trakai Island castle several days before it reached Lithuania. He was buried in the Cathedral of Vilnius. After the deaths of Jogaila and Vytautas, the Lithuanian nobility attempted to break the union between Poland and Lithuania, independently selecting Grand Dukes from the Jagiellon dynasty. But, at the end of the 15th century, Lithuania was forced to seek a closer alliance with Poland when the growing power of the Grand Duchy of Moscow threatened Lithuania's Russian principalities and sparked the Muscovite-Lithuanian Wars and the Livonian War. On the 8th of September 1514, the Battle of Orshaw between Lithuanians, commanded by the Grand Hetman Konstanty Ostrogsky, and Muscovites was fought, according to Rerum Moscoviticarum Commentary by Sigismund von Herberstein, the primary source for information on the battle. The much smaller army of Poland-Lithuania, under 30,000 men, defeated a force of 80,000 Muscovite soldiers, capturing their camp and commander. The battle destroyed a military alliance against Lithuania and Poland. Thousands of Muscovites were captured as prisoners and used as laborers in the Lithuanian manors, while Konstanty Ostrogsky delivered the captured Muscovite flags to the Cathedral of Vilnius. The Livonian War was ceased for 10 years with a truce of Yamzopolsky signed on the 15th of January 1582, according to which the already Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth recovered Livonia, Polotsk, and Vilnius, but transferred Velikai Luki to the Tsardom of Russia. The truce was extended for 20 years in 1600, when a diplomatic mission to Moscow led by Lusapa concluded negotiations with Tsar Boris Godunov. The truce was broken when the Poles invaded Muscovy in 1605. Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was created in 1569 by the Union of Lublin. As a member of the Commonwealth, Lithuania retained its institutions, including a separate army, currency, and statutory laws. The Statute of Lithuania. Eventually Polonization affected all aspects of Lithuanian life, politics, language, culture, and national identity. From the mid-16th to the mid-17th centuries, culture, arts, and education flourished, fueled by the Renaissance and the Protestant Reformation. From 1573, the kings of Poland and Grand Dukes of Lithuania were elected by the nobility, who were granted ever-increasing golden liberties. These liberties, especially the liberum veto, led to anarchy and the eventual dissolution of the state. The Commonwealth reached its golden age in the early 17th century. Its powerful parliament was dominated by nobles who were reluctant to get involved in the 30 Years' War. This neutrality spared the country from the ravages of a political-religious conflict that devastated most of contemporary Europe. The Commonwealth held its own against Sweden, the Tsardom of Russia, and vassals of the Ottoman Empire, and even launched successful expansionist offensives against its neighbors. In several invasions during the time of troubles, Commonwealth troops entered Russia and managed to take Moscow and hold it from the 27th of September 1610 to the 4th of November 1612, when they were driven out after a siege. In 1655, after the extinguishing battle, for the first time in history the Lithuanian capital Vilnius was taken by a foreign army. The Russian army looted the city, splendid churches, and manors. Between 8,000 and 10,000 citizens were killed. The city burned for 17 days. Those who returned after the catastrophe could not recognize the city. The Russian occupation of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania lasted up to 1661. Many artifacts and cultural heritage were either lost or looted. Significant parts of the state archive, Lithuanian metrica, collected since the 13th century, were lost and the rest was moved out of the country. During the Northern Wars, 1655 to 1661, the Lithuanian territory and economy were devastated by the Swedish army. Almost all territory of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania was occupied by Swedish and Russian armies. This period is known as Tvanas, the Deluge. Before it could fully recover, Lithuania was ravaged during the Great Northern War, 1700 to 1721. The war, a plague, and a famine caused the deaths of approximately 40% of the country's population. Foreign powers, especially Russia, became dominant in the domestic politics of the Commonwealth. Numerous fractions among the nobility used the golden liberties to prevent any reforms. The Constitution of the 3rd of May 1791 was adopted by the Great Sejm, Parliament, of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth trying to save the state. The legislation was designed to redress the Commonwealth's political defects due to the system of golden liberties, also known as the nobles' democracy, which had conferred disproportionate rights on the nobility, and over time had corrupted politics. The constitution sought to supplant the prevailing anarchy fostered by some of the country's magnates with a more democratic constitutional monarchy. It introduced elements of political equality between townspeople and nobility, and placed the peasants under the protection of the government, thus mitigating the worst abuses of serfdom. It banned parliamentary institutions such as the liberum veto, which had put the Sejm at the mercy of any deputy who could revoke all the legislation that had been passed by that Sejm. It was drafted in relation to a copy of the United States Constitution. It is regarded as the world's second oldest codified national governmental constitution after the 1787 U.S. Constitution. Russian Empire. Eventually, the Commonwealth was partitioned in 1772, 1792, and 1795 by the Russian Empire, Prussia, and the Habsburg monarchy. The largest area of Lithuanian territory became part of the Russian Empire. After the unsuccessful uprisings in 1831 and 1863, the Tsarist authorities implemented a number of Russification policies. In 1840 the Third Statute of Lithuania was abolished. They banned the Lithuanian press, closed cultural and educational institutions and made Lithuania part of a new administrative region called Northwestern Krai. The Russification failed, owing to an extensive network of Lithuanian book smugglers and secret Lithuanian homeschooling. After the Russo-Turkish War, 1877 to 1878, when German diplomats assigned what were seen as Russian spoils of war to Turkey, the relationship between Russia and the German Empire became complicated. The Russian Empire resumed the construction of fortresses at its western borders for defense against a potential invasion from Germany in the west. On 7 July 1879 the Russian Emperor Alexander II approved a proposal from the Russian military leadership to build the largest first-class defensive structure in the entire state, the 65 square kilometers, 25 square miles, Kaunas Fortress. Large numbers of Lithuanians went to the United States in 1867 to 1868 after a famine. Simonas Daukantas promoted a return to Lithuania's pre-Commonwealth traditions, which he depicted as a golden age of Lithuania and renewal of the native culture, based on the Lithuanian language and customs. With those ideas in mind, he wrote already in 1822 a history of Lithuania in Lithuanian. Darbai Senelaya Tuvu Imeasiu, the deeds of ancient Lithuanians and Samogitians, though it was not published at that time. A colleague of S. Daukantas, Todana wrote in Polish a voluminous ancient history of the Lithuanian nation, 1835 to 1841, where he likewise expounded and expanded further on the concept of historic Lithuania, whose days of glory had ended with the Union of Lublin in 1569. But, invoking German scholarship, pointed out the relationship between the Lithuanian and Sanskrit languages. A Lithuanian national revival, inspired by the ancient Lithuanian history, language and culture, laid the foundations of the modern Lithuanian nation and independent Lithuania. 20th and 21st centuries 1918 to 1939 As a result of the Great Retreat during World War I, Germany occupied the entire territory of Lithuania and Courland. By the end of 1915, a new administrative entity, Oberost, was established. Lithuanians lost all political rights they had gained, personal freedom was restricted, and at the beginning, the Lithuanian press was banned. However, the Lithuanian intelligentsia tried to take advantage of the existing geopolitical situation and began to look for opportunities to restore Lithuania's independence. On the 22nd of September 1917, the Vilnius Conference elected the 20-member Council of Lithuania. The Council adopted the Act of Independence of Lithuania on the 16th of February 1918, which proclaimed the restoration of the independent state of Lithuania governed by democratic principles, with Vilnius as its capital. The state of Lithuania, which had been built within the framework of the Act, lasted from 1918 until 1940. Following the capitulation of Germany in November 1918, the first provisional constitution of Lithuania was adopted and the first government of Prime Minister Augustinas Voldemaras was organized. At the same time, the army and other state institutions began to be organized. Lithuania fought 3 wars of independence, against the Bolsheviks who proclaimed the Lithuanian Soviet Socialist Republic, against the Bermontians, and against Poland. As a result of the staged Zligowski's mutiny in October 1920, Poland took control of Vilnius region and annexed it as Wilno Voivodeship in 1922. Lithuania continued to claim Vilnius as its de jure capital, the de facto, provisional capital being Kaunas, and relations with Poland remained particularly tense and hostile for the entire interwar period. In January 1923, Lithuania staged the Klaipėda revolt and captured Klaipėda region, Murmel territory, which was detached from East Prussia by the Treaty of Versailles. The region became an autonomous region of Lithuania. On the 15th of May 1920, the first meeting of the democratically elected Constituent Assembly took place. The documents it adopted, i.e., the temporary, 1920, and permanent, 1922, constitutions of Lithuania, strove to regulate the life of the new state. Land, finance, and educational reforms started to be implemented. The currency of Lithuania, the Lithuanian litas, was introduced. The University of Lithuania was opened. All major public institutions had been established. As Lithuania began to gain stability, foreign countries started to recognize it. In 1921, Lithuania was admitted to the League of Nations. On the 17th of December 1926, a military coup d'état took place, resulting in the replacement of the democratically elected government with a conservative authoritarian government led by Antanas Smetona. Augustinas Voldemaras was appointed to form a government. The so-called authoritarian phase had begun, strengthening the influence of one party, the Lithuanian Nationalist Union, in the country. In 1927, the Seimas was dissolved. A new constitution was adopted in 1928, which consolidated presidential powers. Gradually, opposition parties were banned, censorship was tightened, and the rights of national minorities were narrowed. On the 15th of July 1933, Steponas Darius and Stasys Gainas, Lithuanian pilots, emigrants to the United States, made a significant flight in the history of world aviation. They flew across the Atlantic Ocean, covering a distance of 6,411 kilometers, 3,984 miles, without landing, in 37 hours and 11 minutes, 172.4 kilometers per hour, 107.1 miles per hour. In terms of comparison, as far as the distance of non-stop flights was concerned, their result ranked second only to that of Russell Boardman and John Polando. The provisional capital Kaunas, which was nicknamed Little Paris, and the country itself had a Western standard of living with sufficiently high salaries and low prices. At the time, qualified workers there were earning very similar real wages as workers in Germany, Italy, Switzerland, and France. The country also had a surprisingly high natural increase in population of 9.7, and the industrial production of Lithuania increased by 160% from 1913 to 1940. The situation was aggravated by the global economic crisis. The purchase price of agricultural products had declined significantly. In 1935, farmers began strikes in Suwałki and Dzūkija. In addition to economic ones, political demands were made. The government cruelly suppressed the unrest. In the spring of 1936, 4 peasants were sentenced to death for starting the riots. 1939 to 1944. On the 20th of March 1939, after years of rising tensions, Lithuania was handed an ultimatum by Nazi Germany demanding it relinquish the Klaipėda region. 2 days later, the Lithuanian government accepted the ultimatum. When Nazi Germany and Soviet Union concluded the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, Lithuania was initially assigned to the German sphere of influence but was later transferred to the Soviet sphere. At the outbreak of World War II, Lithuania declared neutrality. In October 1939, Lithuania was forced to sign the Soviet-Lithuanian Mutual Assistance Treaty. 5 Soviet military bases with 20,000 troops were established in Lithuania in exchange for Vilnius, which the Soviets had captured from Poland. Delayed by the winter war with Finland, the Soviets issued an ultimatum to Lithuania on the 14th of June 1940. They demanded the replacement of the Lithuanian government and that the Red Army be allowed into the country. The government decided that, with Soviet bases already in Lithuania, armed resistance was impossible and accepted the ultimatum. President Smetona left the country, hoping to form a government in exile, while more than 200,000 Soviet Red Army soldiers crossed the Belarus-Lithuania border. The next day, identical ultimatums were presented to Latvia and Estonia. The Baltic states were occupied. The Soviets followed semi-constitutional procedures for transforming the independent countries into Soviet republics and incorporating them into the Soviet Union. Vladimir Tikhonozov was sent to supervise the formation of the puppet People's Government and the rigged election to the People's Seimas. The Lithuanian Soviet Socialist Republic was proclaimed on the 21st of July and accepted into the Soviet Union on the 3rd of August. Lithuania was rapidly Sovietized. Political parties and various organizations, except the Communist Party of Lithuania, were outlawed. Some 12,000 people, including many prominent figures, were arrested and imprisoned in Gulag as enemies of the people. Larger private property was nationalized, the Lithuanian litas was replaced by the Soviet ruble, farm taxes were increased by 50 to 200%, the Lithuanian army was transformed into the 29th Rifle Corps of the Red Army. On the 18th of June 1941, less than a week before the Nazi invasion, some 17,000 Lithuanians were deported to Siberia, where many perished due to inhumane living conditions. See the June deportation. The occupation was not recognized by Western powers, and the Lithuanian diplomatic service, based on pre-war consulates and legations, continued to represent independent Lithuania until 1990. When Nazi Germany attacked the Soviet Union on the 22nd of June 1941, Lithuanians began the anti-Soviet June Uprising, organized by the Lithuanian Activist Front. Lithuanians proclaimed independence and organized the Provisional Government of Lithuania. This government quickly self-disbanded. Lithuania became part of the Reichskommissariat Ostland, German civil administration. By the 1st of December 1941, over 120,000 Lithuanian Jews, or 91 to 95% of Lithuania's pre-war Jewish community, had been killed. 110 Nearly 100,000 Jews, Poles, Russians and Lithuanians were murdered at Panerai. However, thousands of Lithuanian families risking their lives also protected Jews from the Holocaust. Israel has recognized 893 Lithuanians, as of the 1st of January 2018, as righteous among the nations for risking their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. Approximately 13,000 men served in the Lithuanian auxiliary police battalions. 10 of the 26 Lithuanian auxiliary police battalions working with the Nazi Einsatzkommando were involved in the mass killings. Rogue units organized by Algirdas Klimatis and supervised by SS Brigade Führer Walter Stahlecker started the Corners pogrom in and around Corners on the 25th of June 1941. In 1941, the Lithuanian Security Police, Lietuvos Saugumo Policija, subordinate to Nazi Germany's Security Police and Nazi Germany's Criminal Police, was created. The Lietuvos Saugumo Policija targeted the communist underground. A new occupation had begun. Nationalized assets were not returned to the residents. Some of them were forced to fight for Nazi Germany or were taken to German territories as forced laborers. Jewish people were herded into ghettos and gradually killed by shooting or sending them out to concentration camps. 1944 to 1990. After the retreat of the German armed forces, the Soviets re-established their control of Lithuania in July to October 1944. The massive deportations to Siberia were resumed and lasted until the death of Stalin in 1953. Antanas Sniečkus, the leader of the Communist Party of Lithuania from 1940 to 1974, supervised the arrests and deportations. All Lithuanian national symbols were banned. Under the pretext of Lithuania's economic recovery, the Moscow authorities encouraged the migration of workers and other specialists to Lithuania with the intention to further integrate Lithuania into the Soviet Union and to develop the country's industry. At the same time, Lithuanians were lured to work in the USSR by promising them all the privileges of settling in a new place. The second Soviet occupation was accompanied by the guerrilla warfare of the Lithuanian population, which took place in 1944 to 1953. It sought to restore an independent state of Lithuania, to consolidate democracy by destroying communism in the country, returning national values and the freedom of religion. About 50,000 Lithuanians took to the forests and fought Soviet occupants with a gun in their hands. In the later stages of the partisan war, Lithuanians formed the Union of Lithuanian Freedom Fighters, and its leader Jonas Žemaitis, codename Vytautas, was posthumously recognized as the president of Lithuania, despite the fact that the guerrilla warfare did not achieve its goal of liberating Lithuania and that it resulted in more than 20,000 deaths. The armed resistance de facto demonstrated that Lithuania did not voluntarily join the USSR, and it also legitimized the will of the people of Lithuania to be independent. Lithuanian courts and the ECHR both treat the Soviets' annihilation of the Lithuanian partisans as a genocide. Even with the suppression of partisan resistance, the Soviet government failed to stop the movement for the independence of Lithuania. The underground dissident groups were active, publishing the underground press and Catholic literature. The most active participants of the movement included Vincentas Sladkavicius, Sigitas Tamkavicius, and Nijolsa Junait. In 1972, after Romas Kalanta's public self-immolation, the unrest in corners lasted for several days. The Helsinki Group, which was founded in Lithuania after the International Conference in Helsinki, Finland, where the post-World War II borders were acknowledged, announced a declaration for Lithuania's independence on foreign radio station. The Helsinki Group informed the Western world about the situation in the Soviet Lithuania and violations of human rights. With the beginning of the increased openness and transparency in government institutions and activities, Glasnost, in the Soviet Union. On the 3rd of June 1988, the Sąjūdis was established in Lithuania. Very soon it began to seek country's independence. Vytautas Landsbergis became movement's leader. The supporters of Sąjūdis joined movements groups all over Lithuania. On the 23rd of August 1988, a big rally took place at the Vilnius Park in Vilnius. It was attended by approximately 250,000 people. A year later, on the 23rd of August 1989, commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and aiming to draw the attention of the whole world to the occupation of the Baltic states, a political demonstration, the Baltic Way, was organized. The event, led by Sąjūdis, was a human chain spanning 600 kilometers, 370 miles, across Vilnius, Riga, and Tallinn, indicating the desire of the people of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia to break away from the Soviet Union. 1990 present. On the 11th of March 1990, the Supreme Council announced the restoration of Lithuania's independence. Lithuania became the first Soviet-occupied state to announce the restitution of independence. On the 20th of April 1990, the Soviets imposed an economic blockade by ceasing to deliver supplies of raw materials, primarily oil, to Lithuania. Not only the domestic industry, but also the population started feeling the lack of fuel, essential goods, and even hot water. Although the blockade lasted for 74 days, Lithuania did not renounce the Declaration of Independence. Gradually, economic relations had been restored. However, tensions had peaked again in January 1991. At that time, attempts were made to carry out a coup using the Soviet armed forces, the Internal Army of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the USSR Committee for State Security, KGB. Because of the poor economic situation in Lithuania, the forces in Moscow thought the coup d'état would receive strong public support. People from all over Lithuania flooded to Vilnius to defend their legitimately elected Supreme Council of the Republic of Lithuania and independence. The coup ended with a few casualties of peaceful civilians and caused huge material loss. Not a single person who defended Lithuanian parliament or other state institutions used a weapon, but the Soviet army did. Soviet soldiers killed 14 people and injured hundreds. A large part of the Lithuanian population participated in the January events. Shortly after, on the 11th of February 1991, the Icelandic parliament voted to confirm that Iceland's 1922 recognition of Lithuanian independence was still in full effect, as it never formally recognized the Soviet Union's control over Lithuania, and that full diplomatic relations should be established as soon as possible. On the 31st of July 1991, Soviet paramilitaries killed 7 Lithuanian border guards on the Belarusian border in what became known as the Medinkai Massacre. On the 17th of September 1991, Lithuania was admitted to the United Nations. On the 25th of October 1992, the citizens of Lithuania voted in a referendum to adopt the current constitution. On the 14th of February 1993, during the direct general elections, Algirdas Brazauskas became the first president after the restoration of independence of Lithuania. On the 31st of August 1993, the last units of the Soviet army left the territory of Lithuania. On the 31st of May 2001, Lithuania joined the World Trade Organization, WTO. Since the 29th of March 2004, Lithuania has been part of the NATO. On the 1st of May 2004, it became a fully fledged member of the European Union, and a member of the Schengen Agreement on the 21st of December 2007. On the 1st of January 2015, Lithuania joined the Eurozone and adopted the European Union's single currency as the last of the Baltic states. On the 4th of July 2018, Lithuania officially joined OECD. Dalia Grybauskaitė, 2009 to 2019, was the first female president of Lithuania and the first president to be re-elected for a second consecutive term. Geography - Lithuania is located in the Baltic region of Europe and covers an area of 65,200 square kilometers, 25,200 square miles. It lies between latitudes 53 degrees and 57 degrees north, and mostly between longitudes 21 degrees and 27 degrees east. Part of the Curonian Spit lies west of 21 degrees. It has around 99 kilometers, 61.5 miles, of sandy coastline, only about 38 kilometers, 24 miles, of which face the open Baltic Sea, less than the other two Baltic Sea countries. The rest of the coast is sheltered by the Curonian Sand Peninsula. Lithuania's major warm water port, Klaipėda, lies at the narrow mouth of the Curonian Lagoon. Lithuanian, Kuršių marios, a shallow lagoon extending south to Kaliningrad. The country's main and largest river, the Nemunas River, and some of its tributaries carry international shipping. Lithuania lies at the edge of the North European plain. Its landscape was smoothed by the glaciers of the last ice age, and is a combination of moderate lowlands and highlands. Its highest point is Aukštojas Hill at 294 meters, 965 feet, in the eastern part of the country. The terrain features numerous lakes, Lake Vistatis, for example, and wetlands, and a mixed forest zone covers over 33% of the country. Druksai is the largest, Tauragnas is the deepest, and Asvu is the longest lake in Lithuania. After a re-estimation of the boundaries of the continent of Europe in 1989, Jean-Georges Folder, a scientist at the Institut Géographique National, French National Geographic Institute, determined that the geographic center of Europe was in Lithuania, at 54 degrees 54 and 25 degrees 19 E, 26 kilometers, 16 miles, north of Lithuania's capital city of Vilnius. A Folder accomplished this by calculating the center of gravity of the geometrical figure of Europe. Climate - Lithuania has a temperate climate with both maritime and continental influences. It is defined as humid continental, DFB, under the Köppen climate classification, but is close to oceanic in a narrow coastal zone. Average temperatures on the coast are -2.5 degrees Celsius, 27.5 degrees Fahrenheit, in January, and 16 degrees Celsius, 61 degrees Fahrenheit, in July. In Vilnius the average temperatures are -6 degrees Celsius, 21 degrees Fahrenheit, in January, and 17 degrees Celsius, 63 degrees Fahrenheit, in July. During the summer, 20 degrees Celsius, 68 degrees Fahrenheit, is common during the day, while 14 degrees Celsius, 57 degrees Fahrenheit, is common at night. In the past, temperatures have reached as high as 30 or 35 degrees Celsius, 86 or 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Some winters can be very cold, -20 degrees Celsius, -4 degrees Fahrenheit, occurs almost every winter. Winter extremes are -34 degrees Celsius, -29 degrees Fahrenheit, in coastal areas and -43 degrees Celsius, -45 degrees Fahrenheit, in the east of Lithuania. The average annual precipitation is 800 mm, 31.5 in, on the coast, 900 mm, 35.4 in the Samogitia Highlands and 600 mm, 23.6 in the eastern part of the country. Snow occurs every year. It can snow from October to April. In some years sleet can fall in September or May. The growing season lasts 202 days in the western part of the country and 169 days in the eastern part. Severe storms are rare in the eastern part of Lithuania but common in the coastal areas. The longest records of measured temperature in the Baltic area cover about 250 years. The data show warm periods during the latter half of the 18th century, and that the 19th century was a relatively cool period. An early 20th century warming culminated in the 1930s, followed by a smaller cooling that lasted until the 1960s. A warming trend has persisted since then. Lithuania experienced a drought in 2002, causing forest and peat bog fires. Environment - After the restoration of Lithuania's independence in 1990, the Aplinkos apsaugos įstatymas, Environmental Protection Act, was adopted already in 1992. The law provided the foundations for regulating social relations in the field of environmental protection, established the basic rights and obligations of legal and natural persons in preserving the biodiversity inherent in Lithuania, ecological systems and the landscape. Lithuania agreed to cut carbon emissions by at least 20% of 1990 levels by the year 2020 and by at least 40% by the year 2030, together with all European Union members. Also, by 2020 at least 20%, 27% by 2030, of the country's total energy consumption should be from the renewable energy sources. In 2016, Lithuania introduced especially effective container deposit legislation, which resulted in collecting 92% of all packagings in 2017. Lithuania does not have high mountains and its landscape is dominated by blooming meadows, dense forests and fertile fields of cereals. However, it stands out by the abundance of hill forts, which previously had castles where the ancient Lithuanians burned altars for pagan gods. Lithuania is a particularly watered region with more than 3,000 lakes, mostly in the northeast. The country is also drained by numerous rivers, most notably the longest Nemunas. Lithuania is home to two terrestrial ecoregions, Central European mixed forests and Sarmatic mixed forests. Forest has long been one of the most important natural resources in Lithuania. Forests occupy 1/3 of the country's territory and timber-related industrial production accounts for almost 11% industrial production in the country. Lithuania has 5 national parks, 30 regional parks, 402 nature reserves, 668 state-protected natural heritage objects. In 2018, Lithuania was ranked 5th, second to Sweden. First 3 places were not granted. In the Climate Change Performance Index, CCPI, it had a 2019 Forest Landscape Integrity Index mean score of 1.62, ranking it 162nd globally out of 172 countries. Biodiversity - Lithuanian ecosystems include natural and semi-natural forests, bogs, wetlands and meadows, and anthropogenic, agrarian and urban, ecosystems. Among natural ecosystems, forests are particularly important to Lithuania, covering 33% of the country's territory. Wetlands, raised bogs, fens, transitional mires, etc., cover 7.9% of the country. with 70% of wetlands having been lost due to drainage and peat extraction between 1960 and 1980. Changes in wetland plant communities resulted in the replacement of moss and grass communities by trees and shrubs, and fens not directly affected by land reclamation have become drier as a result of a drop in the water table. There are 29,000 rivers with a total length of 64,000 kilometers in Lithuania, the Nemunas River basin occupying 74% of the territory of the country. Due to the construction of dams, approximately 70% of spawning sites of potential catadromous fish species have disappeared. In some cases, river and lake ecosystems continue to be impacted by anthropogenic eutrophication. Agricultural land comprises 54% of Lithuania's territory, roughly 70% of that is arable land and 30% meadows and pastures. Approximately 400,000 hectares of agricultural land is not farmed, and acts as an ecological niche for weeds and invasive plant species. Habitat deterioration is occurring in regions with very productive and expensive lands as crop areas are expanded. Currently, 18.9% of all plant species, including 1.87% of all known fungi species and 31% of all known species of lichens, are listed in the Lithuanian Red Data Book. The list also contains 8% of all fish species. The wildlife populations have rebounded as the hunting became more restricted and urbanization allowed replanting forests. Forests already tripled in size since their lows. Currently, Lithuania has approximately 250,000 larger wild animals, or 5 per each square kilometer. The most prolific large wild animal in every part of Lithuania is the roe deer, with 120,000 of them. They are followed by boars, 55,000. Other ungulates are the deer, 22,000, fallow deer, 21,000, and the largest one, moose, 7,000. Among the Lithuanian predators, foxes are the most common, 27,000. Wolves are, however, more ingrained into the mythology as there are just 800 in Lithuania. Even rarer are the lynxes, 200. The large animals mentioned above exclude the rabbit, 200,000 of which may live in the Lithuanian forests. Government and politics. Government. Since Lithuania declared the restoration of its independence on the 11th of March 1990, it has maintained strong democratic traditions. It held its first independent general elections on the 25th of October 1992, in which 56.75% of voters supported the new constitution. There were intense debates concerning the constitution, particularly the role of the president. A separate referendum was held on the 23rd of May 1992 to gauge public opinion on the matter, and 41% of voters supported the restoration of the President of Lithuania. Through compromise, a semi-presidential system was agreed on. The Lithuanian head of state is the president, directly elected for a 5-year term and serving a maximum of 2 terms. The president oversees foreign affairs and national security, and is the commander-in-chief of the military. The president also appoints the prime minister and, on the latter's nomination, the rest of the cabinet, as well as a number of other top civil servants and the judges for all courts. The current Lithuanian head of state, Gitanas Nausėda, was elected on the 26th of May 2019 by unanimously winning in all municipalities of Lithuania. The judges of the Constitutional Court, Konstitucinis Teismas, serve 9-year terms. They are appointed by the president, the chairman of the Seimas, and the chairman of the Supreme Court, each of whom appoint 3 judges. The unicameral Lithuanian Parliament, the Seimas, has 141 members who are elected to 4-year terms. 71 of the members of its members are elected in single-member constituencies, and the others in a nationwide vote by proportional representation. A party must receive at least 5% of the national vote to be eligible for any of the 70 national seats in the Seimas. Political parties and elections. Lithuania was one of the first countries in the world to grant women a right to vote in the elections. Lithuanian women were allowed to vote by the 1918 Constitution of Lithuania and used their newly granted right for the first time in 1919. By doing so, Lithuania allowed it earlier than such democratic countries as the United States, 1920, France, 1945, Greece, 1952, Switzerland, 1971. Lithuania exhibits a fragmented multi-party system, with a number of small parties in which coalition governments are common. Ordinary elections to the same as take place on the second Sunday of October every 4 years. To be eligible for election, candidates must be at least 25 years old on the election day, not under allegiance to a foreign state and permanently reside in Lithuania. Persons serving or due to serve a sentence imposed by the court 65 days before the election are not eligible. Also, judges, citizens performing military service, and servicemen of professional military service and officials of statutory institutions and establishments may not stand for election. Homeland Union. Lithuanian Christian Democrats won the 2020 Lithuanian parliamentary elections and gained 50 of 141 seats in the parliament. In October 2020, the prime ministerial candidate of Homeland Union Lithuanian Christian Democrats, TSLKD, Ingrida Simonite formed a centre-right coalition with two liberal parties. The President of Lithuania is the head of state of the country, elected to a 5-year term in a majority vote. Elections take place on the last Sunday no more than 2 months before the end of current presidential term. To be eligible for election, candidates must be at least 40 years old on the election day and reside in Lithuania for at least 3 years. In addition to satisfying the eligibility criteria for a member of the parliament, same president may serve for not more than 2 terms. Gitanas Nausėda has won the most recent election as an independent candidate in 2019. Each municipality in Lithuania is governed by a municipal council and a mayor, who is a member of the municipal council. The number of members, elected on a 4-year term, in each municipal council depends on the size of the municipality and varies from 15, in municipalities with fewer than 5,000 residents, to 51, in municipalities with more than 500,000 residents. 1,524 municipal council members were elected in 2015. Members of the council, with the exception of the mayor, are elected using proportional representation. Starting with 2015, the mayor is elected directly by the majority of residents of the municipality. Social Democratic Party of Lithuania won most of the positions in the 2015 elections, 372 municipal council seats and 16 mayors. As of 2019, the number of seats in the European Parliament allocated to Lithuania was 11. Ordinary elections take place on a Sunday on the same day as in other EU countries. The vote is open to all citizens of Lithuania, as well as citizens of other EU countries that permanently reside in Lithuania, who are at least 18 years old on the election day. To be eligible for election, candidates must be at least 21 years old on the election day, a citizen of Lithuania or a citizen of another EU country permanently residing in Lithuania. Candidates are not allowed to stand for election in more than one country. Persons serving or due to serve a sentence imposed by the court 65 days before the election are not eligible. Also, judges, citizens performing military service, and servicemen of professional military service and officials of statutory institutions and establishments may not stand for election. 6 political parties and 1 committee representatives gained seats in the 2019 elections. Law and law enforcement. In 1934 to 1935, Lithuania held the first mass trial of the Nazis in Europe. The convicted was sentenced to imprisonment in a heavy labor prison and capital punishments. After regaining of independence in 1990, the largely modified Soviet legal codes were in force for about a decade. The current constitution of Lithuania was adopted on the 25th of October 1992. In 2001, the Civil Code of Lithuania was passed in Seimas. It was succeeded by the Criminal Code and Criminal Procedure Code in 2003. The approach to the criminal law is inquisitorial, as opposed to adversarial. It is generally characterized by an insistence on formality and rationalization, as opposed to practicality and informality. Normative legal act enters into force on the next day after its publication in the Teisės Aktų registers, unless it has a later entry into force date. The European Union law is an integral part of the Lithuanian legal system since the 1st of May 2004. Lithuania, after breaking away from the Soviet Union, had a difficult crime situation. However, the Lithuanian law enforcement agencies eliminated many criminals over the years, making Lithuania a reasonably safe country. Crime in Lithuania has been declining rapidly. Law enforcement in Lithuania is primarily the responsibility of local Lietuvos policija, Lithuanian police, commissariats. They are supplemented by the Lietuvos policijos antiteroristinių operacijų rinktinės, anti-terrorist operations team of the Lithuanian police aras, Lietuvos kriminalinis policijos biuras, Lithuanian Criminal Police Bureau, Lietuvos policijos kriminalistinių tyrimų centras, Lithuanian Police Forensic Research Center, and Lietuvos kelių policijos tarnyba, Lithuanian Road Police Service. In 2017, there were 63,846 crimes registered in Lithuania. Of these, thefts comprised a large part with 19,630 cases, 13.2% less than in 2016, while 2,835 crimes were very hard crimes that may result in more than 6 years imprisonment, which is 14.5% less than in 2016. Totally, 129 homicides or attempted homicide occurred, 19.9% less than in 2016, while serious bodily harm was registered 178 times, 17.6% less than in 2016. Another problematic crime, contraband cases, also decreased by 27.2% from 2016 numbers. Meanwhile, crimes in electronic data and information technology security fields noticeably increased by 26.6%. In the 2013 Special Eurobarometer, 29% of Lithuanians said that corruption affects their daily lives, EU average 26%. Moreover, 95% of Lithuanians regarded corruption as widespread in their country, EU average 76%, and 88% agreed that bribery and the use of connections is often the easiest way of obtaining certain public services, EU average 73%. Though, according to local branch of Transparency International, corruption levels have been decreasing over the past decade. Capital punishment in Lithuania was suspended in 1996 and fully eliminated in 1998. Lithuania has the highest number of prison inmates in the EU. According to scientist Gintautas Sakalauskas, this is not because of a high criminality rate in the country, but due to Lithuania's high repression level and the lack of trust of the convicted, who are frequently sentenced to a jail imprisonment. Administrative divisions The current system of administrative division was established in 1994 and modified in 2000 to meet the requirements of the European Union. The country's 10 counties, Lithuanian, singular, apskritis, plural, apskritis, are subdivided into 60 municipalities, Lithuanian, singular, savivaldybė, plural, savivaldybės, and further divided into 500 elderships, Lithuanian, singular, seniūnija, plural, seniūnijos. Municipalities have been the most important unit of administration in Lithuania since the system of county governorship, apskritis viršininkas, was dissolved in 2010. Some municipalities are historically called district municipalities, often shortened to district, while others are called city municipalities, sometimes shortened to city. Each has its own elected government. The election of municipality councils originally occurred every 3 years, but now takes place every 4 years. The council appoints elders to govern the elderships. Mayors have been directly elected since 2015. Prior to that, they were appointed by the council. Elderships, numbering over 500, are the smallest administrative units and do not play a role in national politics. They provide necessary local public services, for example, registering births and deaths in rural areas. They are most active in the social sector, identifying needy individuals or families and organizing and distributing welfare and other forms of relief. Some citizens feel that elderships have no real power and receive too little attention, and that they could otherwise become a source of local initiative for addressing rural problems. Foreign relations. Lithuania became a member of the United Nations on the 18th of September 1991, and is a signatory to a number of its organizations and other international agreements. It is also a member of the European Union, the Council of Europe, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, as well as NATO and its adjunct North Atlantic Coordinating Council. Lithuania gained membership in the World Trade Organization on the 31st of May 2001, and joined the OECD on the 5th of July 2018, while also seeking membership in other Western organizations. Lithuania has established diplomatic relations with 149 countries. In 2011, Lithuania hosted the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe Ministerial Council meeting. During the second half of 2013, Lithuania assumed the role of the presidency of the European Union. Lithuania is also active in developing cooperation among Northern European countries. It has been a member of the Baltic Council since its establishment in 1993. The Baltic Council, located in Tallinn, is a permanent organization of international cooperation that operates through the Baltic Assembly and the Baltic Council of Ministers. Lithuania also cooperates with Nordic and the two other Baltic countries through the NB8 format. A similar format, NB6, unites Nordic and Baltic members of EU. NB6's focus is to discuss and agree on positions before presenting them to the Council of the European Union and at the meetings of EU foreign affairs ministers. The Council of the Baltic Sea States, CBSS, was established in Copenhagen in 1992 as an informal regional political forum. Its main aim is to promote integration and to close contacts between the region's countries. The members of CBSS are Iceland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland, Germany, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, Russia, and the European Commission. Its observer states are Belarus, France, Italy, Netherlands, Romania, Slovakia, Spain, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Ukraine. The Nordic Council of Ministers and Lithuania engage in political cooperation to attain mutual goals and to determine new trends and possibilities for joint cooperation. The Council's Information Office aims to disseminate Nordic concepts and to demonstrate and promote Nordic cooperation. Lithuania, together with the 5 Nordic countries and the 2 other Baltic countries, is a member of the Nordic Investment Bank, NIB, and cooperates in its Nord Plus program, which is committed to education. The Baltic Development Forum, BDF, is an independent non-profit organization that unites large companies, cities, business associations and institutions in the Baltic Sea region. In 2010 the BDF's 12th summit was held in Vilnius. Poland was highly supportive of Lithuanian independence. Despite Lithuania's discriminatory treatment of its Polish minority, the former Solidarity leader and Polish President Lech Walesa criticized the government of Lithuania over discrimination against the Polish minority and rejected Lithuania's Order of Vytautas the Great. Lithuania maintains greatly warm mutual relations with Georgia and strongly supports its European Union and NATO aspirations. During the Russo-Georgian War in 2008, when the Russian troops were occupying the territory of Georgia and approaching towards the Georgian capital Tbilisi, President Valdas Adamkus, together with the Polish and Ukrainian presidents, went to Tbilisi by answering to the Georgians' request of the international assistance. Shortly, Lithuanians and the Lithuanian Catholic Church also began collecting financial support for the war victims. In 2004 to 2009, Dalia Grybauskaite served as European Commissioner for Financial Programming and the Budget within the José Manuel Barroso-led Commission. In 2013, Lithuania was elected to the United Nations Security Council for a 2-year term, becoming the first Baltic country elected to this post. During its membership, Lithuania actively supported Ukraine and often condemned Russia for the military intervention in Ukraine, immediately earning vast Ukrainians' esteem. As the war in Donbas progressed, President Dalia Grybauskaite has compared the Russian President Vladimir Putin to Joseph Stalin and to Adolf Hitler. She has also called Russia a terrorist state. In 2018, Lithuania, along with Latvia and Estonia, were awarded the Peace of Westphalia Prize for their exceptional model of democratic development and contribution to peace in the continent. In 2019, Lithuania condemned the Turkish offensive into northeastern Syria. In December 2021, Lithuania reported that in an escalation of the diplomatic spat with China over its relations with Taiwan, China had stopped all imports from Lithuania. The 2023 NATO summit will be held in the Lithuanian capital Vilnius. Military dash. The Lithuanian Armed Forces is the name for the unified armed forces of Lithuanian Land Force, Lithuanian Air Force, Lithuanian Naval Force, Lithuanian Special Operations Force and other units, Logistics Command, Training, and Doctrine Command, Headquarters Battalion, Military Police. Directly subordinated to the Chief of Defense are the Special Operations Forces and Military Police. The reserve forces are under command of the Lithuanian National Defense Volunteer Forces. The Lithuanian Armed Forces consist of some 20,000 active personnel, which may be supported by reserve forces. Compulsory conscription ended in 2008 but was reintroduced in 2015. The Lithuanian Armed Forces currently have deployed personnel on international missions in Afghanistan, Kosovo, Mali, and Somalia. Lithuania became a full member of NATO in March 2004. Fighter jets of NATO members are deployed in Zomny Airport and provide safety for the Baltic airspace. Since the summer of 2005, Lithuania has been part of the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan, ISAF, leading a provincial reconstruction team, PRT, in the town of Shigcharan in the province of Gore. The PRT includes personnel from Denmark, Iceland and the US. There are also Special Operation Forces units in Afghanistan, placed in Kandahar province. Since joining international operations in 1994, Lithuania has lost 2 soldiers. Lieutenant Normandas Valteris fell in Bosnia, as his patrol vehicle drove over a mine. Sergeant Arunas Jama Lavisius was fatally wounded during an attack on the camp of his provincial reconstruction team in Afghanistan. The Lithuanian national defense policy aims to guarantee the preservation of the independence and sovereignty of the state, the integrity of its land, territorial waters and airspace, and its constitutional order. Its main strategic goals are to defend the country's interests, and to maintain and expand the capabilities of its armed forces so they may contribute to and participate in the missions of NATO and European Union member states. The Defense Ministry is responsible for combat forces, search and rescue, and intelligence operations. The 5,000 border guards fall under the Interior Ministry's supervision and are responsible for border protection, passport and customs duties, and share responsibility with the Navy for smuggling and drug trafficking interdiction. A special security department handles VIP protection and communications security. In 2015, National Cybersecurity Center of Lithuania was created. Paramilitary organization Lithuanian Riflemen's Union acts as a civilian self-defense institution. According to NATO, in 2020, Lithuania allocated 2.13% of its GDP to the national defense. For a long time, especially after the global financial crisis in 2008, Lithuania lagged behind NATO allies in terms of defense spending. However, in recent years it has begun to rapidly increase the funding, exceeding the NATO guideline of 2% in 2019. Economy - Lithuania has an open and mixed economy that is classified as high-income economy by the World Bank. According to data from 2016, the three largest sectors in Lithuanian economy are services, 68.3% of GDP, industry, 28.5%, and agriculture, 3.3%. World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness Report ranks Lithuania 41st, of 137 ranked countries. Lithuania joined NATO in 2004, EU in 2004, Schengen in 2007 and OECD in 2018. On the 1st of January 2015, euro became the national currency, replacing litus at the rate of €1 equals 3.45280 Lithuanian litai. Agricultural products and food comprise 18.3% of exports. Other major sectors include chemical products and plastics, 17.8%, machinery and appliances, 15.8%, mineral products, 14.7%, wooden furniture, 12.5%. According to data from 2016, more than half of all Lithuanian exports go to 7 countries including Russia, 14%, Latvia, 9.9%, Poland, 9.1%, Germany, 7.7%, Estonia, 5.3%, Sweden, 4.8%, and United Kingdom, 4.3%. Exports equaled 81.31% of Lithuania's GDP in 2017. Lithuanian GDP experienced very high real growth rates for decade up to 2009, peaking at 11.1% in 2007. As a result, the country was often termed as a Baltic tiger. However, in 2009, due to a global financial crisis, market experienced a drastic decline. GDP contracted by 14.9% and unemployment rate reached 17.8% in 2010. After the decline of 2009, Lithuanian annual economic growth has been much slower compared to pre-2009 years. According to IMF, financial conditions are conducive to growth and financial soundness indicators remain strong. The public debt ratio in 2016 fell to 40% of GDP, to compare with 42.7% in 2015. Before global finance crisis, 15% of GDP in 2008. On average, more than 95% of all foreign direct investment in Lithuania comes from European Union countries. Sweden is historically the largest investor with 20% to 30% of all FDI in Lithuania. FDI into Lithuania spiked in 2017, reaching its highest ever recorded number of greenfield investment projects. In 2017, Lithuania was third country, after Ireland and Singapore, by the average job value of investment projects. The US was the leading source country in 2017, 24.59% of total FDI. Next up are Germany and the UK, each representing 11.48% of total project numbers. Based on the Eurostat's data, in 2017, the value of Lithuanian exports recorded the most rapid growth not only in the Baltic countries, but also across Europe, which was 16.9%. In the period between 2004 and 2016, 1 out of 5 Lithuanians emigrated, primarily due to insufficient income for residence, secondarily seeking to study abroad. Long-term emigration and economy growth has resulted in a noticeable shortage in the labor market and growth in salaries being larger than growth in labor efficiency. Unemployment rate in 2017 was 8.1%. As of 2020, Lithuanian median wealth per adult was $29,679. mean was $63,500, while the total national wealth was $138 billion. As of 2021, the average monthly net salary in Lithuania was over €1,000 or $2,200 adjusted for purchasing power parity, although cost of living in the country also is sufficiently less, with the price level for household final consumption expenditure, HFCE-63, being 39% lower than EU average, 102 in 2016. Lithuania has a flat tax rate rather than a progressive scheme. According to Eurostat, the personal income tax, 15%, and corporate tax, 15%, rates in Lithuania are among the lowest in the EU. The country has the lowest implicit rate of tax on capital, 9.8%. In the EU, corporate tax rate in Lithuania is 15% and 5% for small businesses. 7 free economic zones are operating in Lithuania. Information technology production is growing in the country, reaching €1.9 billion in 2016. In 2017 only, 35 fintech companies came to Lithuania, a result of Lithuanian government and Bank of Lithuania simplified procedures for obtaining licenses for the activities of e-money and payment institutions. Europe's first international blockchain center launched in Vilnius in 2018. Lithuania has granted a total of 39 e-money licenses, second in the EU only to the UK with 128 licenses. In 2018, Google set up a payment company in Lithuania. Companies largest companies of Lithuania in 2020, by revenue. Agriculture in Lithuania dates to the Neolithic period, about 3000 to 1000 BC. It has been one of Lithuania's most important occupations for many centuries. Lithuania's accession to the European Union in 2004 ushered in a new agricultural era. The EU pursues a very high standard of food safety and purity. In 1999, the Seimas, Parliament, of Lithuania adopted a law on product safety, and in 2000 it adopted a law on food. The reform of the agricultural market has been carried out on the basis of these two laws. In 2016, agricultural production in Lithuania was €2.29 billion. Cereal crops occupied the largest part of it, 5,709.7 tons. Other significant types include sugar beets, 933.9 tons, rapeseed, 392.5 tons, and potatoes, 340.2 tons. Products totaling €4,385.2 million were exported from Lithuania to foreign markets, of which products for €3,165.2 million were Lithuanian origin. Export of agricultural and food products accounted for 19.4% of all exports of goods from the country. Organic farming is constantly becoming more popular in Lithuania. The status of organic growers and producers in the country is granted by the public body Ecogrows. In 2016, there were 2,539 such farms that occupied 225,541.78 hectares. Of these, 43.13% were cereals, 31.22% were perennial grasses, 13.9% were leguminous crops and 11.75% were others. Science and technology Foundation of the University of Vilnius in 1579 was a major factor of establishing local scientist community in Lithuania and making connections with other universities and scientists of Europe. Georg Forster, Jean Emmanuel Gilibert, Johann Peter Frank and many other visiting scientists have worked at University of Vilnius. Lithuanian Bajoras and Grand Duchy of Lithuania artillery expert Kazimieras Simonavičius is a pioneer of rocketry, who has published Artis Magni Artillery in 1650 that for over 2 centuries was used in Europe as a basic artillery manual and contains a large chapter on caliber, construction, production and properties of rockets, for military and civil purposes. including multi-stage rockets, batteries of rockets, and rockets with delta-wing stabilizers. A botanist Jurgis Parbreza, 1771–1849, created first systematic guide of Lithuanian flora Zlius Augminis, botany, written in Samogitian dialect, the Latin Lithuanian Dictionary of Plant Names, first Lithuanian textbook of geography. During the interwar period, humanitarian and social scientists emerged such as Vosilius Sezemanas, Levas Kasivinas, Michaelas Romerus. Due to the world wars, Lithuanian science and scientists suffered heavily from the occupants. However, some of them reached world-class achievements in their lifetime. Most notably, Antanas Gustaitis, Vytautas Grajus, Maria Gimbutas, Birut Galdikas, A. Jeklai or Algirdas Julius Kremas, medievalist Jurgis Baltruzatus, Algirdas Antanas of Izinis